But right now on the Newsmaker Hotline, we are joined by Joe DiGenova, our legal analyst. Okay, Joe, I know that you are a well-armed lawyer. You have purchased a lot of weapons of late. And let me ask you this question. You're in Boston. There is a terrorist on the loose in your neighborhood. You have police in the neighborhood, but of course the blue line is a thin blue line. Police can't be everywhere all the time. In a situation like this, if somebody were to kick in your back door, a potential terrorist who's desperate, liable to do anything, how many bullets do you want in your magazine? Do you want 7 or do you want 10? Do you want 10 or do you want 30?
Let's put it this way, Brian. I don't want the O'Malley. I don't want the O'Malley clip because that's the small clip. I want the DiGenova clip, which is 15 and above.
All right, I just had to ask you that question. It's a little off topic. All right, so you got this guy. His name is Zarniev, Johar Zarniev. He is in custody. He's recovering from wounds to the neck. How do you handle a guy like this from a legal standpoint?
Well, first of all, he's been unconscious, so you're not handling him at all. Once he becomes conscious, you can start to talk to him. There is no reason in the world he has to be read as Miranda Rights. He can be handled as an enemy combatant because even though he's a U.S. citizen, he took up arms against the United States. So he can be treated as a citizen enemy combatant. He can be questioned. He doesn't have to be read as Miranda Rights. And by the way, he also doesn't have to answer any questions. All these people on television have been assuming that just because he isn't read as Miranda Rights, he's going to talk. As an enemy combatant, he can shut up because he knows that our president is not going to send him to Gitmo because he said he won't send people to Gitmo anymore. So he just sits there and clams up. But my guess is that this guy's going to do some talking because I think he's pretty proud of what he's done.
Hey, Joe, it's Tori. It's great to hear your voice. And I'm so happy to be on this morning because I have so many questions after this weekend. And I'm sure this is probably a very stupid question, but if we designate him an enemy combatant, what does it say about the broader war on terror? I know we're not allowed to call it that anymore, but there is a war on terror. We are dealing with extremists who want to do harm to all of us and our loved ones. What does it say about the broader war on terror?
Well, it says that we still are at war, that the theater has once again returned to the United States, that we've had an act of terror on our soil committed by an Islamic Muslim radical in the name of Islam. The president doesn't want to admit that. He's living in a dream world. The president is a fantasist. He's a fabulist. He doesn't want to say the words. There's something inherent in him that makes him not want to admit that the motivating force here is radical Islam. And we need to keep saying it because if we don't, we're gonna drop our guard. Just like the FBI dropped its guard when they got information from the Russian intelligence service, the FSB, that this guy was on their radar screen. The fact that he was not followed up on and interviewed when he came back after a 6-month stay in Russia is inexcusable. And I don't care what all these former FBI counterterrorism guys are saying on television. They are trying to make the Bureau look like this was a nothing burger. This was the biggest, fattest cheeseburger ever served up by a foreign intelligence service.
Yeah, I mean, the Foreign Intelligence Service said, look, you need to look at this guy. We think he may be a believer in this radical Islam.
And guess what? They were right.
And the FBI goes out and talks to them and decides they don't have anything that they can pin on the guy and they can't really do anything. And so they sort of ignore it. But then apparently something got put in the file because one reads, then some of the reporting on this morning, is that when it came time to consider him as a U.S. citizen, there was enough in the file for them to say, no, we're not going to allow you to become a U.S. citizen. However, apparently not enough to say you should be deported. And here's my last question about that. How is it that you've had contact with this guy, you're the FBI, you've filed out a report on the guy, you've visited with him, you've looked him in the eye. When the picture comes out of the suspects, how is it that somebody in the FBI says, oh, I know who that is, I talked to that guy?
Brian, the after-incident analysis on this, the after-action analysis on this is going to be very ugly. And there are folks in the Bureau now who are seeking early retirement. This is a complete intelligence failure. Everything that you said is textbook what should have been done. This was an opportunity, and I want everybody to remember this. The Boston bombing could have been prevented. What we know now is that there was enough information in the hands of the United States government to do something about the 26-year-old. And the government, as usual, did not do what it should have done. The 9/11 Commission complained about the lack of imagination in the intelligence community. It was more a combination not only of that, but of rules and regulations which hampered the intelligence community. If the Bureau needed more leeway to deal with this guy, they could have gotten it. They have the right to get waivers, to do all sorts of things. This was bad tradecraft by the Bureau. When you hear information from a foreign intelligence service that says they have a keen interest in someone, that is the biggest red flag in intelligence.
Joe, can I ask you, 'cause when I heard that, I thought, okay, I'm getting a little rusty on this stuff because I've been out of the government for a few years now, but that to me was a big red flag. That doesn't happen that often, correct?
It does not.
They don't call up about a particular individual unless they have real reason to call up about that particular individual.
Absolutely. And this is so important. This is the single most important fact in the whole scenario that has developed. We had a chance. We had a warning. And remember, the Russians are not good at much. They make vodka and they know how to spy. They know how to spy. They knew there was something about this guy. What did we do with that information? What did they send us? I want to see what the Russians sent us and what our people did.
Well, we're going to have Representative Dutch Ruppersberger on the line here in just a little while. Maybe he can shed some light on this. But let's get back to this question of whether or not this person should be handled in the regular court system in the U.S. or should be declared an enemy combatant and perhaps sent to some place like Gitmo. Where do you come down on that? And by the way, that's the question for audience at 1-888-630-9625. We'll give you the first crack at it, Joe.
I want to do both. I'm going to treat him as an enemy combatant. I want to question him as much as I can, as long as I can. See if I can convince him to tell us things, and then prosecute him later. This doesn't have to be done in a hurry. He can be handled as an enemy combatant, and if he agrees to talk, he can wait and wait and wait. This thing about 48 hours is nonsense. That's if you're going to prosecute somebody. It just means it's called the Mallory rule, and it comes out of the D.C. tapes. You've heard all this about he has to be, brought before a magistrate within 48 hours. All that means is anything he says can't be used against him. It's like another form of Miranda.
Right.
The bottom line is question him, get as much intelligence as possible, and then when you're ready, you can prosecute him.
But in the U.S. courts or in the military courts?
In a federal criminal court.
You would go with the regular court system and not the military tribunal?
No, I wouldn't. First of all, I don't think under the legislation that was passed he's eligible for it because he is a U.S. citizen. But you know what? It doesn't matter because once we've gotten the intelligence, which is the most important thing of all, get what we can. Find out if there's another part of the cell. Are there other cells? This is all about intelligence. It's not about what happens to this guy in the long run. He's going to be convicted. That's not the problem. The problem is get the information now.
All right, Joe DiGenova.
Thanks, Joe.
Always appreciated. Thank you, Joe.
You bet, guys.